This video was made possible thanks to the support of our amazing patrons. We couldn't do this without you.
Don't forget that you can support the channel for free and receive 10% off orders over $10 at Flipside Gaming by using the promo code Affinity at the checkout. Or if TCG Player or Magic Madhouse are more your thing, then be sure to place your order through our affiliate links in the description. Once again, at no extra cost to yourselves. Hello everyone and welcome back to Affinity for Commander. My name is Alex and today we are continuing our deep dive into the Phyrexian lore. Just in case you missed part 1, the link for it is in the description below, and there will also be a link for it in the top right corner now. But let's focus on where we left off our Phyrexian friends in part 1. Yawgmoth had been killed by Urza and Gerard through the use of the legacy weapon, which unfortunately claimed both of their lives in the process. The Phyrexian hordes were also decimated by the arrival of the 9 titans on Phyrexia, and they all retreated back to their plane, leaving Dominaria in relative peace. Now, over the course of Magic's long history, we have had little tidbits dropped here and there as to the original Phyrexia plane's fate, and there are a few things we know for certain. Number 1, Yawgmoth is 100% dead. Number 2, Phyrexia is in a state of complete ruin, with just wandering hordes going about wastelands, no centralized government or any manner of organization or anything like that. It is primarily decimated, let's say. So, score 1 for the good guys. But with that part of the story firmly closed, our next chapter concentrates on one character specifically, and that is Kharn, Urza's silver time-travelling golem. You see, following the absolute mess that occurred on Dominaria, Kharn decided that now would be a good time to go out travelling, see the multiverse. And considering he was now in possession of Urza's Planeswalker Spark, travelling seemed right on the cards. In fact, Kharn spent quite some time jumping from plane to plane, learning about new and different creatures, but eventually settled on the idea of creating his own metallic, beautiful plane of several spheres that he began to call Argentium. What? Oh, you're wondering what this has to do with Phyrexia. Well, I'm getting to that. You see, Kharn, in a rather stark parallel to a current global pandemic, was in fact carrying around with him a teeny tiny little bit of Phyrexian oil deep within his core. This oil, or ichor, was something that would latch onto and corrupt anything and everything it touched. In fact, on the plane of Argentium, its first major casualty was the artificial being of Memnarch, a guardian artifice creature that Kharn had created to watch over his plane whilst he was floundering about the multiverse. Memnarch, inspired by his creator and having the desire to planeswalk himself, began to alter and turn Kharn's beloved Argentium into essentially a farm to try and coalesce beings who could potentially become planeswalkers and then harvest their sparks. To accomplish this, Memnarch used soul traps to lure and control beings from all across the multiverse, gathering them on this plane and keeping them there. This is in fact where most of Argentium's entire population came from, trapping beings from across the multiverse, hence why they are, well, so exceptionally racially and specially diverse. You've got elves, loxodons, goblins, anything you can really think of, really. And with this cycle of trapping and trying to perpetually create planeswalker sparks, Memnarch began to call the plane something entirely different. The plane began to be known as Mirrodin. Which, if you've ever heard that name before, you know this is where things start to get a little bit messed up. However, during this reconstruction of the plane from Argentium into Mirrodin, something began to grow beneath the plane's surface: microsynths. These were large fungal-like organisms that spread through spores that, upon going into contact with artificial life, they would begin to reconstruct it into organic tissue, And the same is said, but vice versa, for any organic life the spores came into contact with, transforming them into more metallic-like creatures. But we're just going to put a pin in that for the time being and let that piece of heavy foreshadowing just lay there for the time. Khan, upon hearing of this, was understandably quite miffed, so he rushed back to his beloved Argentium to find it instead corrupted and warped into the plane of Mirrodin. However, he could only watch from the sidelines. He was in fact barred from entering the plane that he himself had helped create by Memnarch's own power. Instead, Khan decided to send in Glisser, Bosch, and Slowbad, as well as the Kaldra Avatar, to try and, well, give Memnarch a really good talking to. Memnarch, however, having actual use of his card's abilities, turned the Kaldra Avatar against the others. Not really a being you want to be fighting. But Glisser at this time in the story was, completely OP. So, reached deep down into the plane's core and burst forth a massive pillar of green mana, completely annihilating the Avatar, and incidentally, creating Mirrodin's fifth moon. Fifth dawn, because there's a new sun. Oh, I get that now. That's nice. And with Memnarch suitably stunned from this act of pure, quite frankly, ridiculous amount of power, Khan was able to return to his plane, and upon setting foot, he was able to also return Memnarch to the liquid metal Miri from which he had been begotten. And upon seeing the entirely new populace upon the plane, Khan decided to try and return as many as possible back to their homes. This event was called the Vanishing, and essentially removed an entire third of the plane's population. Just a little hint, this little bit of the story will also be quite significant moving forward. With some manner of stability now restored on the semi-brutalised plane, Khan buggers off for another holiday, because let's be honest, he's deserved it, and instead leaves Glisser, Slowbad and Geth in charge of Mirrodin's safety. However, Mirrodin did not need guarding from any outside threat. The threats were already growing right beneath the plane's surface. Remember those microsynths that I was talking about just a little bit beforehand? Yeah, they had been diligently at work, creating networks of lattices all under the plane's surface, and transforming inhabitants of Mirrodin into, well, creatures that we are very much quite accustomed to at this point in the story. Any being that instead was found itself unlucky enough to be underground was changed, becoming more metallic, becoming harder, better, faster, stronger, and certainly more than capable of fighting and having a need for, completion. Yes, indeed, from its humble beginnings as a small pool of ichor in Khan's core, Phyrexia was rebuilding itself rather diligently and quickly beneath the plane's surface, using Mirrodin as essentially a kind of cocoon. Although, I suppose that's not really fair. It's more like one of those parasitic wasps that lays its larvae inside the beating heart and organs of a still living fly, having them slowly consume the fly from the inside out until they finally burst forth from its weakened, desecrated corpse. Too much? Yeah, probably too much. However, this time with the Phyrexians, something was different. Without the All-Father Yawgmoth's black mana penetrating and helping create the Phyrexian hordes, instead the Phyrexians had to rely on all sources of mana to accrue their power. So now, rather than just generic artifice or black aligned Phyrexians, we now have Phyrexians of all colours of mana. And now with their army fully stocked, teeth and claws are gnashing, an entire third of the potential resistance just vanished into thin air. Now, the Phyrexians decided would be the time to make their move. Bursting forth from the plane's surface, the Phyrexians went about diligently and quickly and efficiently corrupting and completing all inhabitants they could get their hands on. And now, with being able to use all 5 colours of mana to their advantage, the Phyrexians were able to quickly construct buildings, monuments, and indeed strongholds to aid in their completion of the plane. And this process was occurring rather quickly. Not only was new 5 colours of mana to help them, the Phyrexians were able to do this because all the Mirrodins that tried to attack them were very quickly either killed or transformed into the enemy, bolstering their own ranks. However, the Phyrexians still had no singular figurehead such as Yawgmoth, so instead they had to rely on 5 new powerful Praetors that had came up through their ranks, 1 for each colour of mana. There was Elesh Norn, the Grand Cenobite, representing white mana and unity of Phyrexia. There was Jin-Gitaxis of blue mana and the ruiner of a perfectly good game of EDH. Sheoldred, the loudest Karen who wants to speak to your manager. Urabrask, the Luigi to the Phyrexians' Mario. And finally Vorinclex, a jerk praetor for jerks whose entire philosophy centers around him reading An Origin of Species one too many times. However, to say that there was absolutely no centralized figurehead that all the Phyrexians centered around is a little bit of a misnomer, because there was one being that the Phyrexians did adore and look to for guidance, a being that was trapped in the middle of Mirrodin's core, the Phyrexians called the Father of Machines, and this being was none other than Khan himself. I know, right? Turns out, after the events of Time Spiral, Khan's mind had been left in what could be charitably called a bit of a state. So he decided the best thing to do would be to return to the plane that he had left in good hands and would be in relative peace to recuperate. But when he returned, he, put it this way, he returned to find it under new management, let's put it that way. Khan, still having his mind corrupted, decided the best thing to do would be to seal himself inside the plane's core, away from everyone else that he could potentially hurt. This, however, had a sort of backfiring effect, as the Phyrexians saw him as their new daddy Yawgmoth, so they all tried to pull him in their various way to get what each colour faction wanted out of their new leader. This really kind of make you wonder what happened to the 3 people Khan left in charge of guarding this plane. So, in a quick summary, Glissa was betrayed by her own people after she was accused of everything bad that had possibly happened to the elves, from the vanishing to leaving the milk out overnight, and was instead corrupted by Phyrexian oil and turned into Vorinclex's champion. Slowbad was, killed quite quickly upon the invasion starting, and Geth was wounded after numerous battles, and incidentally offered a new Arachnean body by the Phyrexians to help take on his foes, which he kind of accepted a little bit too quickly, which he then did in fact use to backhand his foes away, and instead sealed the Vault of Whispers away just for himself, and he now sits as one of the Steel Thanes of Sheoldred. So, in summary, 2/3 of the people Khan left in charge of this plane joined the enemy, and the only reason the 3rd one didn't is because he was killed. Yeah, not exactly doing a bang-up job there, guys. But back to our maddening golem. A brief moment of lucidity between Elesh Norn whispering sweet nothings in his ear and Sheoldred trying to murder him, Khan sent out a metallic envoy to try and gather a group of planeswalkers to essentially come and help him out of his own situation. The group that were then guided to Mirrodin consisted of Venser, Koth, and pre-Theros Elspeth Tyrell. Which, if you'd happen to watch our Elspeth lore video, you know how this goes. But to quickly summarise, the 3 journeying to Mirrodin's core meet up with an elf who is in fact resistant to Phyrexian oil, yay. Free Khan, yay. Unfortunately, this does lead to Venser dying, boo. But Khan gets another Planeswalker spark, completely freeing him of all corruption, yay. Khan then buggers off to try and fight Phyrexians on all other planes rather than staying around to help. Yay? And now the Phyrexian hordes are barreling down on our heroes. Not yay. But now all the pieces are in place. Mirrodin's stage is aglow. The Mirrodin resistance is ready to strike back against the incurring Phyrexian force, and now they have two powerful planeswalkers on their side to help them, and so they muster a final mighty charge against the Phyrexians, and they get absolutely destroyed and decimated with little effort. During one of these final conflicts, the Namiran Angel descends and tries to fight Elesh Norn one-on-one. And during this fight, Elesh Norn is impressed with the Angel's tenacity, and so sets about completing her herself. Elesh Norn invites all of the Praetors to help in this manner, showing a true union of all the factions of Phyrexia to have one unique voice. Urabrask is the only one that does not join in this completion, having apparently better things to do, and we now have the voice of the Praetors being born, Atraxa. With Atraxa's completion, the Phyrexians see this as a final symbol of unity amongst all factions, and have this as a final push to completely decimate all manner of resistance. With utter defeat seemingly at hand, Koth, being the top-notch earthbender he is, seals Elspeth away in a rocky tomb, essentially forcing her to planeswalk away to safety. As for Koth himself, the last we see of him is from Elspeth's perspective as she's sinking into the ground, as he's also facing down an unstoppable Phyrexian horde, which means there are about 3 options for him. Number 1, he dead. Number 2, he escaped. Number 3, he has been captured and completed and turned into the first genuine Phyrexian planeswalker. I know which one I'm hoping for. But with Khan having left and the Mirrodin resistance now thwarted, there was a big power vacuum on the plane, and each of the Praetors wanted that top spot. Vorinclex and Urabrask's forces continually clashed, Elspeth and Shieldred were constantly at each other's throats, and Jin-Gitaxis just kind of sat the whole thing out and just carried on with the experiments. Everyone needs a hobby, I suppose. But after all this fighting, there was one Praetor that rose above the rest. Yes, with the dust settled, it was Elesh Norn that became the dominant Praetor, having backhanded both Shieldred's and Urabrask's forces and gaining the favour of Vorinclex and Jin-Gitaxis. With the white-aligned Praetor now dominant, the voice of the Praetors spreading the good word to everyone who will listen, and the completion of the plane nigh at hand, new Phyrexia was officially born. And this is essentially where we left Phyrexia. Elesh Norn reigns supreme, Khan still running around plugging leaks rather than addressing the main issue, and essentially they are just biding their time, eyeing up the rest of the multiverse. However, for a change, someone is in fact seeking out the Phyrexians. A certain nightmare-weaving planeswalker who wishes to see them for themselves, maybe even use them for their own ends. And that will definitely be a most interesting meeting. And that is the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching, guys. Before you rush off, make sure to subscribe to this channel and like this video for more content like it. And also let us know in the comments below what character or race or plane you would like the lore of next. And if you really like the channel, make sure to follow us on Twitter @4Commander, or become a patron of the channel yourself for a chance to get exclusive, amazing rewards. As always, I've been Alex. Thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.